Hi, this is Jim, your Keys bartender. How are you today? It is a beautiful day. It started out kind of ugly. We had a horrific traffic jam a little further south in Key Largo. It was to go 2 miles, you needed to, at least for this part, if you came in top of stretch, it probably would have taken you 2 hours. But to go 2 miles, it was about an hour and a half. But that changed with time. There hasn't been an accident enough to shut it down for 24 hours. But it did close the schools today. Car accident closes schools today. Yep. There's no alternate routes. There's no better demonstration of the fact of our single ingress and egress. And a lot of times where these things occurs, it's not up to us. If it's down in Key West, then you have the people leaving Key West and coming in, they're interrupted. But when it's at the top, everyone that comes into Keys, practically everyone, unless they're only doing business in the first 6-7 miles, is affected. So, I know. Big problems here in Paradise, I guess. The rest of the country, a lot of different parts of the country, we're dealing with icy roads, snow, no electricity, no water. So the modern conveniences we have now have made us accustomed or unaccustomed to hardships, where people were used to not having fresh water at their at their access, having to boil the water. I don't know if they boiled the water before, because you didn't have to boil the water because it wasn't polluted. Right? Nowadays we got boil water orders because you have sewage running near water supply and all those things. So it's different. Then they did the big thing down here. Used to be in the Florida Keys, and that's when I first came down. Was everyone was using septic systems, and it was mandated. I think it was in EPA regulation or something similar to that, where they had to do waste treatment because of the number of people down here, and that it was to protect the environment and all these things. So it took for years, and people are still getting hooked up, at least in the Upper Keys. And Amarada, they're partially way through the process there with getting hooked to it. And this was over, it had to start a couple of years before I was here, because when I first got here, down the bike path, there was, for several years, the bike path that runs alongside the US 1 that runs the length of the Keys was on this bike path. They were digging out conduits area in the ground, in the coral for conduits, and there was coral dust all over the place. And coral is a living creature, so it's a protein, and a lot of people are allergic to foreign proteins. So that was hell for a lot of people down here, all the coral dust. There's still a lot of coral dust here because they use pulverized coral for rock and decorative landscaping and things like that. So there. Oh, I got to talk about something down here. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. There's not a lot of lawns down here because of how difficult it is to maintain. There's a lot of very little topsoil, a lot of coral. I keep kind of a well-managed green space. I don't use any fertilizer on it to keep the grass green. I keep the native foliage there, but I try to keep it under 2 inches, so it's a carpet of green. But what people have been doing down here is putting AstroTurf on the front of their lawns. AstroTurf is the vinyl plastic covering that people used to use on their furniture. So yeah, AstroTurf on lawns, and I see it on Facebook. People say, "Oh, I want to have a AstroTurf." We'll see. We'll see how that works out. Is it good? Is it bad? It's better than putting fertilizer on grass. I'll be back in a couple minutes. What were we talking about just recently? AstroTurf. Yes. So I guess that's boding of things to come. People want the look of grass, but they don't want to take care of it. So they're going to put in carpeting in front of their house. I guess it's a lot like decorative concrete or anything like that. I don't think it's a really great idea. I think what you want to do is you want to have uninterrupted rainfall coming down. If you don't have grass or soil or anything like that, it's probably best just to have it leach through the coral rock. And, better for the environment. But I guess it runs off no matter what. It's just aesthetically, it's kind of like a boob job on your house, isn't it? Or a facelift. Put an artificial turf down. I mean, are they going to start putting fake trees in front of their house too? Fake plants? People use fake plants in their houses. A lot of people, when they're staging their real estate properties or featuring it, some people bring their own fake plants. I don't get the idea behind it. It's a plant or is it a plant? I want the beauty of the plant, but I don't want any of the stress or any of the benefits of it doing the photosynthesis in the house. Cleaning up the air, eating the carbon dioxide. Fake plants, fake trees, fake grass. When you're going to eventually have an artificial family, which I'm not necessarily against, because they may be much less, abusers to the local environment. Right? If you had an artificial family, you have artificial turf, you have an artificial tree, might as well have in your artificial house have an artificial family. You power them up with solar power. Who knows? We got a lot. That's what we got a lot down here. Solar. We don't see as much. Some people are getting solar down here, but it's nowhere near what you see when you fly over places like Germany. I know, Florida, Sunshine State. You don't see a shitload of solar homes. There's initiatives out here. There's certainly marketing to have solar. We have a troublesome nuclear reactor just to the north of us, Turkey Point, that's always having safety violations and screw-ups. Just recently, I think they were supposedly had to put a new water pump in one of the reactor cores or whatever, and whoever did the installation put it in the wrong reactor. Yep. Yeah, Turkey Point's. I think Turkey Point's just an old reactor, an old reactor. That's you really don't want to see that. You have it like an old house. It's an old bicycle. Oh, we check the chain in the seat and the frame. I'm sure it'll be fine. But an old reactor. That's one of the things you think, well, we should phase it out. And then you think, well, what are we going to replace the power with? Do we have to build another reactor? Because eventually that one will get old too. So people don't talk about it. They talk about brand new reactors and things like that, but they don't talk about them when they get old. Once they figure out how to use through fusion. I think it's fusion where you get to create energy. It's a safer one than fission. When you're breaking it apart, you create less harmful. I'm not saying you don't have harmful, but less harmful radioactive material. But here we are in the Keys. We're surrounded by sunlight. We're surrounded by water. There's tidal, and a lot of times there's a breeze too. So I'm surprised they're not really doing the wind thing. People always worry about it. Say, "Oh, you're killing the birds." I'm like, "Yeah, you see how many birds are near a coal-fired plant? Yeah, there's not a lot of wildlife around coal-fired plants, and then you have the resultant ash from burning of it. So, yeah, just old power plants in general are not unless it's like one of those mills where they had the water wheel. That's probably a couple hundred years old, and you think, well, there's one place. It's really not a power center, right? Because it's just directly relating to the milling of wheat or barley or oats. I don't know how many other things you mill flour, you mill barley, and that's it. I guess once you set something up, you have one of those mills. You got to say, man, we got to start crushing things. Start milling. Bring that coffee over here. We're going to use the mill. That's probably not an efficient way to grind coffee. I mean, but then again, someone will have figured a use for it down here. So we are going, I mentioned previously even, that we are going into our, I guess, less than temperate season. And I know we have a lot of listeners in India, and probably average 85 degrees all year round. Here, we're a little lower than that. And we're an island, so we do have a moderating influence. It rarely gets too far above 90. If you get 95 here, that's crazy because of water. But once the water temperature gets high, it's not much harder for the air to get warm because it doesn't drop either. So in midsummer, we don't get that cooling, big drop in cool that you get in drier climes like deserts. It may hit 120 in the daytime, some of these places, but at least at night you get dropping in the 70s and 60s. I guess all that radiant energy being reflected back. But here all the moisture just kind of socks it in. And then we get the mosquitoes and the no-see-ums. And I'm not doing a really good job attracting people down here, but it is beautiful down here. Not too breezy. The water's kind of flat, which is really nice for people when they come to visit. A lot of people don't like going out because there's surf. I'm not talking about surfing. The waves. You can go out a couple miles and you don't have too many. Your swells are around like 1 or 2 or 3 feet on a calm day. If you go on the bay side, there's hardly anything. A lot of times it's similar to glass, like a big lake back there. But it's something when you see the wind blowing and stuff like that, and you see when you see the bay is churned up and the water's lapping against the overseas highway as you go up the stretch from the Keys to the mainland, that's when you really see, wow, there must be some really bad shit going on the coast. But we have the calming effect of having the reef a couple miles out, and the reef takes a lot of steam out of the surf, so we don't get a real big surf coming in. You get a couple waves. You don't get like the waves you get in Miami, or obviously the big waves on the West Coast, which is totally different. You always have an image when people they think it's Southern California, you always think it's hot and the ocean's hot and warm and stuff like that. Well, you probably won't get any more warmer waters than here in the Keys. I think right now the temperature in the water here is probably higher than it even gets in the summertime on the West Coast. So once that temperature gets above 75 degrees or 73, 74, 75, it's off to the races down here. When I say off to the races, people don't work hard when it's cool. Turn up the temperature about 15, 20 degrees and see how quickly someone moves. When it's hot, all different types of people. I'm talking about all demographics. People. And then there's a lot of people that work their asses off like crazy, no matter what the temperature. It could be here, 95 degrees, you see on a stretch. When I say it rarely gets up to 95 on a stretch, it seems to, because the heat's coming off the mainland. They're surrounded by swamp. They don't get a lot of breeze coming off there. And they're working alongside the roads. They're wearing long sleeve shirts, long sleeve pants. They're covering up their faces because of the dust, not necessarily. This is pre-coronavirus. They'd be all bundled up against the sun, wearing face masks and all that stuff. Yeah, that's pretty heavy duty, I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I guess I would have to do it if I was out in the sun. I worked more than a couple days in the hot sun. But down here, or like any place, you got to be covered up. I'm going to take a little break right now. I'll be right back. I'm going to put on a little music. Let me pause this. We're back. I've been experimenting with shorter shows. I wanted to thank some of our listeners, especially for some reason, there's a huge influx of listeners from India. I know English is already a major form of a language for communicating, since you have so many languages in India. I guess that's one of the things like you can agree on. It's like a family over here. I talk about meat and stuff like that a lot, but Dad may want steak, the wife may want shrimp. They got to settle on something in the middle, and that'd be chicken. We got a lot of chicken down here, a lot of chicken in the Keys, and I'd like to thank those listeners. For some reason, Pune, India, and Pune is part of a word here. If you hear Pune, you always expect to hear the word tang afterwards. Poontang is a slang word for a woman's punani or vagina or something like that, but they get poontang. So I'm not saying your town is that, and I may have just lost some listeners. I apologize. It's just like one of those words. I did in other podcasts, I talked about how I never understood why Americans would make fun of someone's name just because it's in another language and it's unusual to them. Why would you laugh at it? And you say, oh, that's a different name, and it could be popular. It could be very popular there. So why would you make? Oh, in English it sounds like this. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of words, and people say their names like Jim. Jim means, it means the poop on the bottom of your shoe you track in when you step in it. It could mean that in Urdu, or Mandarin, or Armenian. So why would you laugh at someone else's name? I don't get it. But I understand that people have different sounds for different things, and it doesn't necessarily mean just because they sound alike doesn't mean that they mean the same thing. Let's remember that. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you do like the show, please share it with your friends. Leave a comment if you can at jim@keysbartender.com. Send me an email. If you have any questions, if you're real listeners or you're just downloading, what are you downloading? Are you doing it to practice for your citizenship test? I don't know if you want to listen to me if you're taking a citizenship test. You should listen to something like National Public Radio, something like This American Life or Radio Lab. They're really good. They're well spoken. I don't think you necessarily want to follow me. Thank you very much. Have a great day.